RT is sitting down with journalist and poet Jerry Mazza. Sir, thank you very much for sitting down with us.
You're very welcome.
Your book, State of Shock, is the first book ever written by an American poet dedicated fully to the events of 9/11. Why did you decide to write it?
Well, I think it wrote itself. I said, well, I think something is trying to channel its way through me, so I just kept writing. I ended up with about, 80 pages of poems, and they still keep coming.
Do you think you could read us one of your poems dedicated to the events of September 11th?
Let me read you the opening poem, which is called 9/11 Tsunami. Crowds run before the wave of ash, concrete asbestos, time bomb towers exploding, dreadlock clouds and nuclear mushroom forming, cutter charges flickering down, no floors pancaking, black smoke, fire masking, buildings collapse, 10-second free falls, speed of gravity, Tower 7 pulled 8 hours later.
Why this topic?
Because I think it's central to everything that's happened in the last 9 years. 9/11 was the inciting incident of the war on terror. And I think, in essence, quite bluntly, that it was staged by the United States government. It's what they call a false flag event, where you do something and you blame it on your enemy and try to prove that they did it. But the evidence, if you sit down and think about it and study it and read about it, points to the fact that it was what we call an inside job. There was no inquiry as to who did it. All of a sudden, they pulled 12 pictures out. These were the 15 guys, supposedly, who did it. Now, if they had those pictures, why didn't they listen to all the warnings that they'd had for months before from practically every Western and Mideastern nation on Earth? People were warning them something's going to happen. But in fact, stories were suppressed, whistleblowers were silenced.
Your take is that the Bush administration was behind all of this?
I think the Bush administration, with some help from the Saudis, Pakistan was involved, and I would say Israel as well.
Why would the Bush administration undertake this sin?
Because I think they needed an inciting incident to get America to go to war with the Muslim world. The plan to attack Afghanistan and Iraq were on the drawing boards in year 2000, before the Bush company really began growing and rolling.
A lot of your work deals with the effects of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, their effects on the American psyche.
Right.
How have the American people been affected by these wars?
Well, I think we live in an elevated sense of fear, whether we know it or not. It's a collective post-traumatic stress syndrome, you know.
Why do you think the American media never questioned the official version of what happened?
Because the American media is an integral part of the military-industrial complex. For instance, NBC is owned by General Electric. General Electric supplies electronic systems to aircraft. The news agency CBS is owned by another mega corporation. Channel 7, ABC, is owned by Disney. You know, Mickey Mouse did it. But this is not new for American media. I mean, the fact that you're talking to an investigative journalist who's not in the employ of one of them means that there's some truth buried here that only a few people talk about. So I think American media has been dreadfully complicit with them.
There's a new presidential administration in America now. It promised change. Why do you think America continues to engage in war?
It's a huge business. Secondarily, the neocon vision was one of world hegemony, that is, a march to being an empire. We were no longer satisfied just to be America. We wanted to be America, the empire. And because of that, we needed to go to the Mideast, where the oil was. That is another factor, because we are in dreadful need of oil. America's using up much more than it produces at home.
Let's talk more about the war in Afghanistan. The Obama administration is relocating more troops and efforts there. Why do you think they're doing that, and is this a good idea?
I don't think it's a good idea. I think this nation is in terrible debt. $2 trillion for the price of the two wars so far. There's nothing to be gained. The people of Afghanistan did not attack us. There was a claim made that Osama was hiding there. They didn't find him in 7 or 8 years. In fact, David Ray Griffin, who wrote this book, has written another book stating that Osama died in December of 2001 because he had a very serious kidney condition. He was under kidney dialysis. He was last seen in August of 2001 in the American hospital in Dubai with his CIA handler. I mean, the CIA put together the Mujahideen with help from the Saudis and a lot of money, with help from Pakistan and a lot of money. It's ridiculous. Iraq, I don't have to tell you about. I mean, weapons of mass destruction, really? Where were they? Have they been found? We've forgotten all about that. We just wanted to get Iraq because they have the third largest amount of available oil in the world. And it's very close to the surface, and it's cheap. And that we're going to bring democracy. We can barely bring democracy to America, let alone to Iraq. And what have they done? They've destroyed the infrastructure of the country. They've poisoned its food supply with depleted uranium. On and on it goes. I mean, these were not noble motives. This was about profit. This was about real estate. This was about domination. This was about the opposite of democracy. In the process, Bush also came up with the Patriot Act, which, for all practical purposes, destroyed the Constitution. He declared the right of habeas corpus null and void. You know, this is not democracy. This is the destruction of democracy.
In your article, Taking Back America, you say that in Washington,
yes,
no real change has come except for a change in the faces.
Yes.
Can you tell us what you mean?
What I mean is that the investment banks are still making a huge amount of money. Unemployment is at an all-time high. They claim it's near 10%, but the real numbers, according to economists, are more like 16.4%, which is very close to the 16.9% that we had in the worst part of the Depression.
What are your predictions for the recession in America?
Dire. I think fundamentally we have lost millions of jobs in America as a result of outsourcing them to India and of destroying our own industrial infrastructure. You see the car companies have fallen. Everything gets made in China or India or Timbuktu, and these jobs are not going to be coming back. I mean, the hope is that we will create a green technology that will supplant these millions of jobs, but that could take a decade.
My last question to you is, are you expecting any real change, any breakthroughs from the new presidential administration?
Having Obama is better than having Bush, who is absolutely homicidal. I think his intentions may be good, but I think he's a bit of a neophyte. And he surrounded himself with people like Rahm Emanuel, whose father fought for the Israeli terror gang, Irgun, and who himself fought for the IDF in Gulf War I, and whose loyalties, I suspect, are divided between what's good for Israel and what's good for America. And there should be no question about that. If you're the president's chief of staff, it's what's good for America. And we've just given Israel $2.777 billion for another year's worth of nuclear armaments, while California is going broke. Okay?
Jerry Meza, thank you very much for your time with us today.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure, and thank you for wanting to listen.